There are many people in the world who really don't understand. Freedom has many difficulties, but we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in. Welcome to the Leo Zagami show with Leon Christie. Straighten up this Vatican. Straighten up this Vatican. Where are we? We are on an historic day, guys, because from my inside sources, directly from the Vatican, the Pope is in coma since yesterday. This is a scoop, which I'm, of course, revealing to you. Pope Francis on deathbed. And we're going to be revealing also the name of the next Pope, that, by the way, was already exposed in volume 7 of my Confessions. But first of all, Christy, who is making this show possible today?
Daniel Estes, Deborah Becker, and Anne O'Flanagan O'Brien. I love your name.
Okay.
Thank you for making this show possible today and for sponsoring and for the few people that bought the book this week.
Yes, guys, you need to purchase Leo Zagami's book, especially because they are somehow prophetic. If you want to know more about the one-world religion that Pope Francis has been trying to put together since 2019, volume 6.66, volume 7, and volume 9. These are the recommended books. Now, we have a lot of people that are following us on X. Please share this video, as what you're about to hear today is absolutely unique. And of course, we are dedicating most of our show today to Pope Francis. I repeat, he's in coma since yesterday, and there is no other media, to my knowledge, that knows that. I mean, it's top secret news. I have somebody who is related to Cardinal who gave me this news. Not allowed to disclose who, though. But also a lot of people would like to know about the future papal conclave. There has been also a movie that is in the cinemas these days, Conclave. It's a thriller. It's dedicated to the conclave, but that's a fictional, of course, account. When instead today I'm going to explain you how Pope Francis has been capable of rigging the whole College of Cardinals for the last few years by nominating an unprecedented number of cardinals he has nominated 163 cardinals, of which 133 are basically electors, meaning that 80% of the College of Cardinals, which decides the next pope, has been, put there by Pope Francis, so that this political war, which Politico is talking about for the next pope, is complete nonsense. I would like to discuss, first of all, my latest article that you can find on leozagami.com. This is the title of the article. Pope Francis preparing for his earthly departure after reading the papal conclave that will nominate the first Black African Pope. Yes, guys, that's what's coming. And a lot of you, of course, know that Pope Francis is sick. We have already the news of Pope Francis talking to his confidants, saying he might not survive the ongoing health scare. Remember that this Pope has been operated when he was very young to his lungs, so he actually has problems already, pulmonary problems, and that means that this polymicrobial infection of the respiratory tract might be fatal for him. I mean, he has had in the past few years some similar events, but not so bad. And his, of course, his health situation, 88-year-old pontiff who has already a series of problems now is facing his death, and that means the election of a new pope, and you will hear all about it today on this show, the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy. But first of all, guys, if you want to support us, you can do it anonymously, you can do it publicly, you can decide yourself. You can find the Cash App handle at leozagami.com, as well, of course, as the GoFundMe. But let me put it also on the screen here for those who are interested in supporting us. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, on Rumble, and of course we will be back on Saturday thanks to Dr. Faro and his great products for our Saturday show. Don't miss our Saturday show, which is just as good as the one we do in the middle of the week. Let me put here on the screen the various ways you can support us. We have a lot of people who are following us, especially on X at the moment. The majority of people, over 200 people, are following us on X as we speak. But first of all, let's discuss a little bit what is happening, because the Pope is currently hospitalized, and is hospitalized at the Gemelli Hospital. Now, people might not know that, but this hospital is very dear to me because that's where I was born. Not everybody in Rome is born at the Gemelli Hospital. It's kind of a VIP kind of hospital. They call it the Hospital of the Popes because they all end up at the Gemelli Hospital. But I was
and they also
there.
Isn't that the one that they imprisoned you in?
No,
Is it that one?
No,
No?
absolutely not. That's
okay.
That's another place on an island. That's no. Well, it's on the mountain, Mount Mario. The mount is Rome has 7 hills, and that is the hill dedicated to Horus, to Mars, to the god of war.
Oh,
so that is one. Instead, there was a island which appears also in Angel and Demons, at least in the book Angel and Demons. But let me show you guys what's going on in the Vatican, of course.
The Leo Zagami Show, breaking news. The Pope is in coma since yesterday. Of course, the official news is not being given yet. And a lot of people ask me, why doesn't the Vatican admit that the Pope is in coma, or that he's dying, or that he's already dead for some? Well, the truth is that even in the past, the Vatican has never really in real time given the health of the popes. It's very secretive. At times they communicated the death of a pope after a day or two. There is a lot of politics going on within the Vatican and the way things operate towards then the papal conclave. Now, everybody knows about a recent movie that is called Conclave, but what we're discussing here is actually probably even more interesting. You know? Politico has reported that the Pope, sensing that he's close to death, he is moving to protect his legacy. Now, Politico is, of course, as you know, a leftist mouthpiece of the globalist. So when they say the battle to succeed Pope Francis is likely to be highly politicized, particularly given the pontiff recent clash with Catholic US Vice President J.D. Vance, because it is true in the past, and this is confirmed also by other authors, like, for example, Eric Frattini in this book, CIA in the Vatican, the NSA has always been covering every single conclave, intercepting all the phone calls. In Domo Santa Marta, where the Pope actually still resides, Pope Francis didn't want to reside in traditional rooms, he decided to stay in Santa Marta. That's where most members of the conclave actually stayed when they get to elect a new pope. So let's explain to everybody how this whole thing works, and also what is the particularity of the next conclave. Because like I said, this is no ordinary pope. This is a Jesuit pope who for the last few years, since he was elected, immediately after, from 2014 onwards, he started to create new left-leaning cardinals that eventually will rig the whole conclave that is coming up. So it's like the Pope will be dead, but trust me, the Pope will still be alive and kicking in the future of the church, because this is the first time Francis has nominated 163 cardinals from 66 countries, 25 of which were never represented in the College of Cardinals from new dioceses. I give you an example. For example, the Diocese of Goa in India. It's no diocese. It exists from 1533, so 7 years before the foundation of the Jesuit order in 1540, though the Jesuits were actually founded in Paris in 1530. They exist, these dioceses, but it's the first time that they have a cardinal with Pope Francis, and that's because soon after the establishment of the Jesuits, Goa in India became one of the strongholds in Asia. Then we have the first cardinal for the indigenous people of Latin America. That goes along with the experiments that the Jesuits conducted in South America, in Latin America for a long time, which were these reducciones, these communist experiments together with the indigenous populations. So the various consistories that the Pope organized up until December, the last one was at the beginning of 7th of December 2024, he continued to nominate new cardinals that could continue his policies, and of course nominate a future pope in line with what he has in mind. Like he nominated many other, for example, in all those cardinals, he nominated a lot of Jesuits, of course,
from his own order, or Jesuits who are very much in line with his progressive policies. And of course, in line with the formation of a one-world religion. Pope Francis appointed, for example, and this is something that I wrote about at the beginning of the year, Robert McRoy, a fierce anti-Trump woke archbishop to Washington, D.C., just before the inauguration. You remember? I wrote an article about this. Now, this gentleman here was, in fact, nominated as cardinal in August 2022. And he was nominated in August 2022 along with a bunch of other progressive cardinals. This is the article on the eve of Trump inauguration. Francis appoints anti-Trump woke archbishop to Washington, D.C. And of course, this, I repeat, is all in line with the election of a future pope who needs to be woke, but he also needs to be black, because they want a pope from Africa. They want a pope from Africa that, in a way, they will use to criticize those forces that are growing forces of opposition in Europe, in America, against illegal immigration. And so you will have, of course, a pope that will be in line with Pope Francis in welcoming all these immigrants, especially from Africa.
Into the Vatican?
Well, I'm sure that's not going to happen. In fact, the Vatican, while they're criticizing Tom Homan, while they're criticizing Donald J. Trump, has the tallest walls, and also the newest laws in the Vatican prohibit illegals, and you can have a fine up to 24,000, I think, euros if you are found illegally in the Vatican. So, I mean, definitely there's no tolerance within their small, I mean, they're not even 1,000 residents in the Vatican, but they have very strict laws regarding immigration. Now, the battle to succeed Pope Francis is not likely to be politicized, because there is no battle. When you have rigged, when you have packed the whole College of Cardinals with 160, well, with 133, because you see, after they get to be 80 years of age, then they can't elect the Pope any longer. So that's why he nominated 163, but 30 of them are too old. So about 133 is a huge number. Like I said, Pope John Paul II nominated only 6 electoral popes. Electoral cardinals that could participate to a conclave. Only 6. Imagine that. So,
and they were part of the college.
And they, I mean, within, for example, Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Benedict XVI, who is Ratzinger, the late Pope Ratzinger, he nominated only 24 cardinal electors in his lifetime as a pope. And like I said, John Paul II, a very important pope who also fought communism, he nominated only 6.
So this won't be too big to rig. I mean, this
is like, he's already big.
Too big. It's big. It's going to be rigged.
No, okay. No, like you were.
Yeah, I was trying to do the analogy.
No, the analogy, Trump said it's too big to rig the election of the people, but in this case, he's rigged.
It's
and
rigged.
And it's actually rigged with 130 cardinal electors. I actually need to correct on my article. I had written 110 because before the 7th of December it was 110. Now it's 130. So 133.
Wow, he's really doing so much work to get all these cardinals.
Yes, he got a lot of, I mean, he actually worked a lot on these cardinals. And like I wrote in my article today, in volume 7 of my Confessions, guys, and this is just so you can realize, I have the name of one of the most likely guys to become Pope. Here it is. Let me show you guys. Here it is. The name you can see marked here, Cardinal Peter Turkson. And what I say here in volume 7 is, and I'm citing myself, and in the future, my inside sources say the patron ministry could be passed on from Bergoglio to Gagnon, Cardinal Peter Turkson, a loyal friend and collaborator of both the Jesuits and Professor Klaus Schwab, who are ready to complete the destruction of the Catholic faith and the last remaining Christian values in it. Turkson, another Catholic liberal communist who offered Pope Francis his resignation in December 2021 because he was officially at the end of his 5-year appointment as prefect of the dicastery for promoting integral human development, and has been indicated by many Freemasons as papable, that is an ideal cardinal for the election of the ideal cardinal for the election to the papacy. But he's not the only black guy who might be in line to become Pope. Let's go and check the many, let's say, the many cardinals and the history of these cardinals, because it's important, guys. As you are following me, a lot of people, of course, are wondering, oh, who are they going to elect? Like, for example, in the movie Conclave, which is, of course, a creation of Hollywood, and you have, of course, excellent actors like Ralph Fiennes, who is a great actor. This is a movie who is out in the cinemas now. There is a whole plot regarding the election in which you have a more liberal cardinal, you have a more conservative one. Sorry, Christy, I'm covering you, but
okay.
The conclave, this is actually the poster of this movie, is fiction, but it's also like things used to be before, when there was actually a political struggle at times between the conservative and progressive sides within the conclave. There is not going to be. How can there be a struggle when you have the majority, 80% of the College of Cardinals who is being nominated by one man, and that one man is Pope Francis? So conclave is, guys, a political thriller it has been named one of the top 10 films of 2024, and I'm sure it's a great movie, but it is a movie. So you have in this movie, you know, 4 leading candidates to the papacy, a liberal in the vein of the late Pope. And by the way, it's important also because these people are very Machiavellic in the way they make movies. No? The Pope they are succeeding is called Gregory the 17th. Now, for those who have read Volume 3 of my Confession, Gregory the 17th is the name who was given to Cardinal Siri, who they actually elected for 2 times, but because of the political interest, you know, because the Second Vatican Council that was starting at the beginning of the 60s was, of course, all Masonic, and only the popes had to be Freemasons. So Cardinal Siri was cast aside for Roncalli and then for Pope Montini. So you see here we have in this situation today a movie, of course, which is just a movie that gives us this fictional account of how a pope in an ideal conclave should be elected. In fact, Cardinal Thomas Lawrence, which is Ralph Fiennes, which is himself a candidate to the papacy, aside from being also an important figure in this movie, because you have, when you are actually within a papal conclave, you have some particular figures who are in charge of the succession of the Pope, and this is also something that needs to be explained. I mean, for those who are not Catholics, a papal conclave is a gathering of the College of Cardinals, which is convened to elect the Bishop of Rome, which is, of course, the Pope. Now, this term Bishop of Rome has been increasingly used also with Pope Francis, which has cast aside the term Pope because he wants to be more and more integrated with all the other Christian denominations, which is has been inviting to the unification and to the upcoming one world religion. Anyway, the actual papal conclave that it's put together, it is something, the real, I'm talking here not about the fiction, but it's put together by the College of Cardinals. Now, the College of Cardinals, as of the 22nd of the January 2025, has 252 cardinals. Okay. Of these 252, 138 are eligible to vote. Of those 138, 133 have been nominated by Bergoglio. Guys, it's obvious that we are in front of a situation whereby the whole thing is rigged like never before in the history of the Catholic Church. I mean, for example, Pope Francis tried to be elected when Pope John Paul II died, but Ratzinger instead managed to become Pope. There was still a little bit of, conservative presence in the Catholic Church, that anti-communist presence that led people like John Paul II, of course, to support the destabilization of the Soviet Union and, of course, all the various satellite states, including Poland, in a different time frame, in a different period of history. Now we have a College of Cardinals of woke pseudo-cardinals appointed by a woke Jesuit Pope. And so you are in front of the something that could have been in line with Kamala Harris, with Joe Biden, with Obama, with Bill Clinton. Let's not forget, it wasn't so long ago that Pope Francis received in the Vatican Alex Soros and Bill Clinton together. It was like something that happened not so long ago. So the College of Cardinals, which has the function, of course, of voting the Pope, but also preparing the Pope for his papacy, discussing the role of his papacy. In this case, I would say it would be simply a reflection of Pope Francis. So they will, for all those people who are, of course, following, and they will be following with great interest in the coming weeks, the election of a new Pope once they officialize the death of the current Pope, Pope Francis, which, to my knowledge, has reached the limit because his health doesn't permit to go further. His earthly body has abandoned him since yesterday. He's in a state of coma. This is what they've been saying. Now, Pope Francis has also exceeded, though, the limit of his consistories, meaning that he's, you see, for many years, I've been talking about the Pope resigning. And maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I was convinced he would resign because everybody in the Vatican was saying, he will follow the example of Pope Benedict XVI. But then Pope Benedict XVI continued to live. And that was a problem for Pope Francis because he could continue influencing the future.
And he did.
The future, and he tried to influence the College of Cardinals. But at one point, Pope Francis issued one consistory after the other. Now, consistories, just for those who don't know what the papal consistory is a formal meeting of the College of Cardinals called by the Pope, in which they regularly nominate a new cardinals. So a meeting of the College of Cardinals to elect a new Pope is not a consistory, but a conclave. But the Pope already did a lot of consistories. He exceeded the limit because he wanted to elect all these cardinals. Yeah. And you have, of course, to oversee the whole thing also in regards to a papal, to what all these cardinals created by Pope Francis. It's unprecedented. 10 consistories held at roughly annual intervals beginning in 2014 and nominating one after the other people who had values that are completely antithetic to how the church used to be before the Second Vatican Council, but even up until the Second Vatican Council. I mean, Pope Paul VI, for example, who was a Freemason, Papa Montini, who was the head of the Catholic Church until 1978, and who was the second Pope to follow the Second Vatican Council, he himself also, of course, had a very important role in introducing consistories on a regular basis. But we're not talking about, and of course, Paul VI himself increased the number of cardinals electors to 134. But now we have a Pope that has made sure that he introduced new cardinals from other parts of the world. One other thing that is quite clear in the politics of Pope Francis is that he has nominated less and less Europeans, less Italians, he has gone towards other parts of the world, so he could, and also I noticed one thing about the nomination of Pope Francis. For example, a lot of Jesuits that were very active in Japan, in Asia, or in South America, the Jesuits have always, guys, remember one thing about the Jesuits. The Jesuits are a very, very important order that was, by the way, kicked out of the Catholic Church because they were too dangerous in the 1770s. They came back into the church after the death of Napoleon, and since then they have been ruling more and more, but they never had a pope. Pope Francis has been the first pope of the Jesuit order, because in their system, the fourth vow, which is given only to certain Jesuits, is of complete and utter, obedience to the Pope, meaning that they will do anything for the Pope, even with the license to kill. The fourth vow of the Jesuits is like that vow that was created, so the Jesuits became the number one intelligence service in the Vatican, military order. After the Knights Templars were eliminated, there was a vacuum in the church that for a period was filled by the Dominicans, who became the head of the Inquisition. But with the Reformation, with the birth of Protestantism, the church felt vulnerable. And so they went to ask to a guy who had been arrested by the Inquisition a few times, Ignazio Loyola, to actually create an order. And Ignazio Loyola was also a magician, a guy who hypnotized young ladies to have some kind of services and all kinds of things, So, and then he strategically built these spiritual exercises. So Pope Francis is from the Jesuit order. It's the first time we have a Jesuit Pope, and strategically goes there and brings the number up of cardinal electors that was already brought up by his predecessors. But also he makes sure that, he was also helped by the fact, there is an enormous amount of calculation behind all this. He knew that a lot of these cardinals were getting old. And so with the limit of 80 years for the election, to be able to be cardinal electors, he knew that a whole bunch of people that had been there for ages, since Pope Paul VI or John Paul II, they had been there for a long time, were fading away. And that's where he brought all these new progressive forces. So on October 2013, Pope Francis announced plans to name new cardinals in a consistory on February 2014. It was, of course, only a year after what happened with Ratzinger, who gave up on his papacy, but he didn't just give up on his Ratzinger, guys, gave up on his papacy because he was blackmailed by the Jesuits. Like I explained in Pope Francis the Last Pope, which is a bestseller I wrote, and like I explained in my book, especially volume 7. Volume 7 is an extremely important book because it's a book that follows up on what I already wrote with Pope Francis the Last Pope and the decline of the Catholic Church due to the lodges and all that. But then it follows up by explaining how the Freemasons are collaborating with the Jesuits, with the Pope. And how this basically one world religion was shaping up thanks to this collaboration. But I don't simply say, these guys are collaborating. I actually give you the names, the photos, the documents that prove that Pope Francis has been, together with the Jesuits, working on a sinister plan to create this one world religion, which eventually, during the pandemic, brought us to
Pachamama.
Well, apart from that, of course, also to Fratelli Tutti, the encyclica, which was very Masonic. And in this book, I also talk about this guy here. Now, who is this guy? Let me put the glasses because he's at 55 almost. Okay. Now, journalist and former spy master Juan Battista Tata Ioffi in November 2017 on Argentinian TV channel 26 admit, I am a Freemason and so is the Pope. Pope Francis. So Pope Francis is a Freemason, and this is very important to understand the connection, that Pope Francis has with Freemasonry, aside from being a Jesuit, because the Jesuits are usually the ones who are dominating certain rites of Freemasonry, certain aspects of Freemasonry. And in fact, let's go back to the various people that were nominated by Pope Francis, because amongst the cardinals created by Pope Francis in the various consistories, for the first time there was a convert. What it means that he wasn't a Catholic, he converted, he was a Lutheran, he was a Swedish guy who in 1969 converted and then became, of course, a Catholic priest, and later on was nominated, this for the first time, a Swedish cardinal. It didn't happen. You see, those are Lutheran areas. But the interesting thing about this guy is that I know this guy because this guy was working with Nikolai de Matos Fritzwold, an Illuminati. Yes. And so
that guy's evil.
That guy is really evil. So you see, these are the kind of people that have been nominated by the Pope. I mean, we have all kinds of nominations. Like, for example, in the June 2018 Francis increased the number of cardinal electors, and after increasing them, he nominated a series of people, amongst them also a known voodoo priest who is also a cardinal. So, I mean, a guy called, here we have him. And he could be also another possible candidate to the papacy.
This is insane.
Here, Sibylle Langlois is an Haitian cardinal of the Catholic Church who was served as bishop and is also president of Haiti's Bishop Conference. We're talking here about a situation. Of course, you have Cardinal Turkson, who is number one on the list of the possible, but you have also other people. And you have very interesting figures, especially amongst the Jesuits that were nominated amongst all these people by Pope Francis.
I'm surprised they didn't nominate any women.
Well, before exiting the scene, just last week, he nominated a woman to a very important position for the first time in the history of the Catholic Church, a nun, I think, to a very important position. That might actually, I think, for the first time, be actually involved in the conclave. So this is an unprecedented thing that the Pope, of course, did, and it's one of the last things that he did. Now, like I said, there is a lot of interesting nominations. Like, for example, this Spanish Jesuit that was nominated by Pope Francis, Luis Francisco Ladayar Ferrer, who is somebody who also apparently was involved with counterintelligence activities for the Vatican, and he was nominated also as Secretary General of the International Theological Commission, and he was raised to the rank of cardinal in 2018 by Pope Francis. But there is many other figures, I repeat, of importance. Let me see, there is one other guy who is also a Jesuit. I mean, the number of Jesuits that were nominated by Pope Francis, of course, is unprecedented, just as unprecedented is the number of cardinals that were nominated by him. This is a Jesuit who, of course, has a very important role because he's a Peruvian prelate of the Catholic Church. And so we know that South America, Central America are the stronghold of Jesuitism. And of course, also in the East, India, for example, in India, there was also a new cardinal, apart from the one in Goa, there was another important cardinal nominated for the first time by Pope Francis. Because, like I said, there is, of course, this connection with the Far East that Jesuits also have. But then there is another guy, a guy who has been very important within the European Union, that were nominated by Pope Francis, Jean-Claude Aurec. Now, this guy here, many say is connected to pedophilia activities, was the president of the Commission of the Bishop Conference of the European Union. He's a member of the Jesuits, and he was, of course, made a cardinal, but he studied in Japan. Of course, many Jesuits have a connection with Japan. Mm-hmm. Many. Pope Francis raised him to the rank of cardinal in October 2019. He's the first cardinal from Luxembourg. And Luxembourg is a very important strategic place for the European Union, because the Jesuits control Brussels, control the whole of the European, all those technocrats in the European Union who are now waging war against Donald J. Trump are a product of Jesuitism. This is very important. And he was involved in pastoral work in Belgium. And in Belgium, we know there has been some very big scandals connected, very big scandals connected to the Catholic Church. We have other Jesuits also, in particular, this gentleman who has been one of the key figures in regards to immigration, encouraging immigration. The Pope made him cardinal in 2019, a member of the Jesuits. He has worked to promote social justice in Canada. But what the hell is Canada? Whatever. Latin America, Africa, and Rome. Yeah, social justice, whatever that is. But here we are really today, and I'm really thanking the unprecedented number of people, because we have almost 600 people who are following us on X. So we have a lot of people who are following us on Rumble. We have also people starting to follow us on YouTube. It's the first time that we have over 600 people live.
That's great.
How does it feel, Christy?
Feels really good.
It feels very good.
Usually there's only about 100 in here.
Okay, very good. And we are, of course, showing you how the Pope has packed, like, for example, in 2020, he announced that he will create another 13 new cardinals. And this list included cardinals from Brunei, Rwanda, and also the first African-American cardinal, the the first. So I mean, there has been a lot that is being done. This first African American cardinal, the first, but not the last, because then he also nominated the one that has just substituted with Daniel Gregory, who was the Archbishop of Washington from 2019 to 2025. Pope Francis made him a cardinal in 2020, and he became the first cardinal of African American descent, before the latest one that I took. But this guy here, a friend of Barack Hussein Obama, of course. So it's not a question of racism here. Gregory previously served as an auxiliary bishop of the Archdiocese of Chicago. That's why he was very close to the Obama family. And so just to give you an idea, I am here, of course, analyzing only certain people, but there is so many. I mean, the list is so long that I can't, of course, tell you everybody, but of course, amongst the cardinals, we have Robert McElroy, which is, of course, from San Diego, and he was elevated as cardinal, the one that we talked about at the beginning of the year.
Is there one in particular that you think is pretty evil, like particularly evil when you see his name?
No, I mean, amongst all the cardinals nominated by Pope Francis, I see only evil. I don't see cardinals that have been nominated because of their goodness. I see cardinals that have been nominated because they have an agenda, and they, of course, they are following blindly the globalist agenda of Pope Francis and the one world religion. I mean, this is the truth. So if you say amongst them, who you prefer, who you don't prefer, I mean, they are all for example, this one here, who apparently, is another great creation of the Society of Jesus, of the Jesuits. He was the provincial superior of the Chinese province, connected to the Chinese Communist Party. And he was made cardinal on September 30, 2023. Here. I mean, I think that maybe what we could expect is even, I mean, of course, this time we will have an African Pope. But guys, expect the next Pope to be Chinese, because that is the competition, I think. Chinese and Jesuit. That would be the competition of hundreds of years of this alliance between China and the Jesuits. The Jesuits, from the moment they were founded, Ignacio Loyola sent one of his closer allies to China, and he became the advisor to the emperor. And from that moment onwards, they sanctioned an alliance.
But you don't think he's going to be Chinese? You think he's going to be...
No, this time it will
be
African, black. But for the next Pope, I can already tell you that it's a high probability that, that we will have a Chinese and Jesuit Pope, because they are buying their way into the Vatican. They made a secret deal with the Vatican in October 2018. Nobody was ever allowed to know what this deal was about, and probably nobody will ever know. Now the Pope dies, and he brings the secret away of his secret deal with the Chinese Communist Party. Pope won confidence he may not survive health scare. Well, that's sad. But we are actually warning you. Don't think for a moment that because now we have, in another era, if we had a conservative, a Republican in the White House, it was highly probable that you will have a Pope that will reflect that. Yeah, absolutely, like Pope John Paul II, who was fighting communism.
And he was with Reagan.
Yes, and he went along with the project. Now, it's completely different, the situation. Somebody said, great, 600 watching, but for us users, it says you have 6. Yes, We have very few people watching us on YouTube. The majority of people today are watching us, and we advise you if you want to join them.
I'm surprised there's not more people on YouTube.
But we have almost 600 people watching us on X. X is our primary.
Thank God for X right now.
Is our primary platform. Second, we have, of course, the Leo Zagami show on YouTube. And third position, we have at the moment Rumble, just behind it. But the primary platform is today X. And we thank you very much for following us on X. Please share.
And this will be going up on Band.video.
And this, of course, we will get a lot of Band.video. Christy, who are our sponsors, by the way?
Oh, my paper full on the floor.
Christy, yes, it's there.
Where?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I found it. Okay. Daniel Estes, Deborah Becker, and O'Flanagan O'Brien.
Okay,
Thank
guys.
you so much for your donation.
Absolutely. And if you want to have more shows, and if, of course, you want to help us out, you can do it anonymously or publicly. It depends from you. And, of course, you can do it with GoFundMe, or you can do it with Cash App. You can find the handle at leozagami.com. And, of course, our next show on Saturday is sponsored by Dr. Anthony Faro and the great Buena Vita products, along with other, of course, of our viewers who might join in the sponsorship. Let's move forward because, of course, the Pope funeral is being rehearsed as we speak. And like I said at the beginning of the show, breaking news and exclusive, of course, scoop from us is that the Pope is in a state of coma since yesterday at the Gemelli Hospital in Rome. The Pope funeral is being rehearsed now. Swiss Guard is preparing for Pontiff's death after the 80-year-old warned, I may not survive pneumonia. And guys, it is a very bad sickness. I had it myself. Recently, I cured it only through antibiotics. Fortunately, I didn't have to take cortisone. But I tell you, if it wasn't for
I thought he was going to die.
Yes. If
His
it was,
fever went up to 104. I mean,
it was
that's
really,
bad.
really terrible, guys. So no guy like Pope Francis with all his pathologies.
It's strange you thought what you had a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely, absolutely. But let's see what the specialists are saying about it.
And a pulmonary and critical care specialist at Northwestern Medicine is with us to talk about what's going on here. Doctor, it's really good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Terrell. How are you?
Hey, really nice to have you. I'm doing well, thanks. So the Pope first had bronchitis. Now it's double pneumonia. When you hear that, what are you concerned about?
Yeah. So when we talk about the lungs, we think about the airways and the lungs where you get the oxygen in and out of your body. And so bronchitis is inflammation of the lungs. And when you get pneumonia, it's actually filling up the air sacs that prevent oxygen from getting into your body. And to have double pneumonia, it means it's affecting both sides of his lungs.
The typical treatment for pneumonia?
So I think it depends if it's viral, like what we've been seeing with flu and RSV, or if it's bacterial. But usually it's antibiotics.
Got it. And we know that the Pope had part of his lung removed, one of his lungs removed earlier in his life. Does that complicate things at all for him and for doctors?
Absolutely. I think if you are looking at this from a picture of he's got less lung, and so if more of the lung is infected by pneumonia, it means he's got less places for oxygen to get to his body, and it could be harder for him to overcome that infection.
Yeah, Pope's 88 years old. Does his age factor in here at all?
Absolutely. I think as people age, you know, they're more susceptible to infections. The Pope's had several infections over the last few years. Each time this kind of knocks down his lung function. And so it's just harder and harder for him to recover. So we'll have to see how he's doing. I'm happy to hear he's in good spirits.
Yeah, it is good news. Dr. John Coleman with Northwestern Medicine. Doctor, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. John Coleman, who, as you can see, reported on the pathology, but also the secrecy, unfortunately, from the Vatican is never going to give you 100% of the info. And like I stated at the beginning of the show, I have an inside source. It's relative to actually a cardinal. It's I think the nephew cardinal who told me that basically the Pope is in a state of coma since yesterday. Tuesday, February 18th.
Wow.
So the Vatican is preparing, as you can see also from the news, that is starting to filter, gradually. But don't expect the Vatican to tell you the Pope is dead when the Pope actually dies, because in history we have always noticed how the Vatican, it's kind of like very unclear.
It took
and
so
very
long
secretive.
to see the white smoke.
When it came down to the elections, then it's also, about the black and the white smoke. And of course, this is going to be an election in which all the experts are going to come in and say, oh, this, that, and all the other. But the truth is, guys, that you heard it first here on the Leo Zagami show. And it's sad that, of course, there's going to be shows that used to have me on, like Alex Jones and his show on InfoWars. But these days, he relies on Daniel Estulin to give information on Donald J. Trump, when Daniel Estulin has written a book against Donald J. Trump. So it's if you want, I can even find it for you. I don't understand how it's possible, the incoherence, people think that Daniel Estulin is a great Trumpian. Sorry, guys, but that's not the case. Just check out for yourself on Amazon. Doesn't Alex Jones know this?
If you write something bad about the president,
he does
not forget it. He doesn't forget it.
It says Donald Trump, billionaire tycoon with fundamentally xenophobic, savage, and populist speech. And now suddenly he is there talking about.
It's called jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Whatever. Guys, we thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, if you want to know more about the possible new Pope and everything that lays behind the creation of this one world religion, I would suggest volume 7 of my Confessions. Otherwise, volume 6.66, and of course, volume 9. Also in regards to what is happening with Ukraine. Finally, now we have Donald Trump exposing this comedian of Zelensky for what he is. And Zelensky, and the Ukrainian people are outraged. There's no outrage. We have given a bunch of money, and we would like to have this money back. The European Union has given 100 billion, so they say, and they only lent it. They borrowed it. They didn't just give it. Why should we give 300 billion and never get it back? So I hope that we will get sooner or later a good deal out of a very bad deal that came out of the hideous policies of Joe Biden. And when Trump says it was the Ukrainians who created this war, well, guys, this war didn't start in 2022. It started with a coup d'etat against the legitimate holder of the presidency in 2014. And then what happened after was the persecution of the Russian population doing the right thing. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Christy, again, who were our sponsors today?
And Flanagan O'Brien, and I don't have my paper anymore. I put it over there.
Christy.
I'm not on the ball today. Okay. Daniel Estes, Deborah Becker, and Anne O'Flanagan O'Brien.
Okay, guys. We never had so many views, 650 people on X. Thank you so much, guys. Well, no, actually, it's 590 on X. Then we have the rest on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, on Rumble. Thank you so much. We will be today. Just go on leozagami.com, where you find the latest article I wrote on the subject. And we will see you on Saturday, guys. Saturday, well, it's going to be a great show. So just get ready. And of course, we close as every week with the wonderful sound of Vincenzo Viceversa, who is also the author of our book covers and the images of Telepandemia Albert. Here we are.
At that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction. social organization, dehumanization, even negative utopia, science, technology, social organization. Technology, social organization, dehumanization. Technology, social organization.